Hey, all right, it looks like we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Thinkful's what has become a weekly kind of hangout series talking
Thanks for joining
about
us.
stuff. Yeah, this is Laura. I'm
Everyone.
Greg. We're here at Thinkful headquarters in the Flatiron District. We have a lot of awesome people joining us today to talk a little bit about the process that they went through learning how to program. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And that there are a lot of different paths out there, and we have a lot of different folks joining us today that have kind of taken a few different routes. I will go ahead and just ask the folks here to take a few moments to introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start with you, William, because you're kind of on one side of my screen. Ask you to just say hi and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm William. I'm a software developer at SunGuard and a graduate at the Flatiron School. I had a very roundabout path to programming. That's the topic of discussion. In a previous life or a previous career, which really was not really all that long ago, I was an auditor at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was in the insurance services group doing what basically amounts to consulting for big financial services companies, and I found that I kept on finding lots of manual processes, things where someone would have to open 30 different Excel spreadsheets and do the same thing to all of them, and it was ripe for automation. So I started automating them and found that to be even more fun than anything else that I'd ever been exposed to in like accounting and business, and so I just decided to pursue that full time.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So for those of you who don't know, Flatiron School is a boot camp, so we're going to be talking today. We're going to have a plethora of perspectives from people who have been self-taught, who have participated in boot camps, studied computer science, and also have been mentored. So just quick disclaimer. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Cool. So Robert, let me move to you next. Just say hi and tell us a little bit about how you got started doing software development. And you're muted right now, so we can't hear what you're saying.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Robert, and I got started in software development almost completely in the traditional college education system. I did a little bit of personal projects before starting college, but I finished my undergraduate degree in computer science, and I'm currently doing my master's degree in computer science. So I am here representing old education.
Excellent. I'm glad we got somebody. Should also note you're at Cornell now. You're an intern.
Cool. I'm interning at Thinkful over the summer, and I'm getting my master's at Columbia.
Columbia, yes.
So what got you into computer science in the first place?
Interest in the internet, I would say. My first ever project before I went to school was actually a lot of web development for friends, then web application development for friends. So I went to school to learn how to do that correctly and learn all the things that I didn't think I would be able to teach myself.
Very cool. And now we've got the next bobbing head, which is Morgan, who is also a very familiar face over here at Thinkful. Take it away, buddy.
How's it going, guys? Thanks, Laura. So I'm currently working as a software engineer at TapEd, and as Gray mentioned, I'm a double threat Thinkful alum. I was a student in the front-end class, and then I was the, I guess, one and only Thinkful engineering fellow. They decided that I was too much of a pain after I worked there for 6 months. They discontinued the program. So I was pretty much self-taught. I got into programming because I wanted to develop a technical skill set and be a valuable asset to startups. I didn't even go to a boot camp like most self-taught developers go to. I instead went to the fellowship, and so it was a combination of on-the-job experience and mentoring. And yeah, that's my story. So I guess I'm representing the School of Hard Knocks over here.
Awesome. So Matt, you're working with a boot camp, but that's not where you learned. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my history started back when I was in middle school. The teacher of my math program introduced us to a programming language called QBasic that basically ran on MS-DOS. I got really interested in it. I found it really exciting. I didn't have internet back then, so I was mainly just reading the documentation that came with QBasic and trying out every single one of the functions that I could find, just exploring it, making games and stuff. And that kind of led me into wanting to do more programming, more stuff like that. I got into web development in high school, started running my own server. That led to a job, led to another job, and I've been working at ThoughtBot for the past 4 years doing Ruby on Rails development, and we just started doing this Metis bootcamp where we're teaching other individuals how to learn how to program.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
No, go for it. I was just gonna cue up Andy and hear a little bit more about your story and what brought you into this crazy world you're in.
I'm Andy. I actually grew up down the street from Rob, and through high school I went to the 2 programming classes our high school offered. One was Java and one was MySQL. After that I decided I don't want to do programming. Went into the hardware engineering aspect of things. Then decided I didn't really like that either and kind of got hired on to work for a small startup. Started out doing just server administration stuff with them because that's what I'd done previously, and then ended up finding that I had a niche for programming web stuff. So I've turned all the way into their lead programmer doing C code and all that kind of stuff with them.
So it sounds like you kind of grew on the job, like you.
Yeah, I have no formal training. I've taken 1 class in college, 2 in high school. Haven't done any fellowships, haven't done any partnerships, nothing like that. No mentoring.
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting way that people learn, I think, in this industry much more frequently than in others. What would you say, kind of approaching computer science and software development from that perspective? What would you say the biggest challenges were from that approach?
All the really basic stuff I had to start with were things I wasn't interested in. So like object-oriented programming took me several years to grasp because I didn't want to do the little basic things that you have to do to learn it. I want to do the interesting project.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What types of resources did you use? Like, did you have people at work?
Friends like Rob or Google, things like that, where I could ask little questions here and there, but really being able to figure it out yourself has helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. Like just putting the pieces together, the small pieces after learning the basics. Even though that takes longer, that's how I tend to learn better.
How did you figure out what to search on Stack Overflow?
That took a while. Yeah. I mean, I had some basic programming background. We did Java in high school, and then I took 1 C++ class in college. That was required as a freshman. Mm-hmm. After that, that was all the formal training I've had.
Yeah, very cool. So, Matt, it sounds like you got interested in this field before. I imagine there were a lot of formal learning opportunities. Did you find yourself kind of doing a lot outside of classes you could take and self-learning much?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, it was mostly self-exploration. By the time I got into high school, instead of paying attention in class, I'd be writing programs down in a little notebook. I'd be writing like Checkers or Minesweeper or some program that I could run. It was a really tough learning experience because I was mostly on my own. I lived in a very rural area. There was very little help for learning this kind of stuff. And so it was mostly on my own, making lots of mistakes over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that era before the internet made it so easy to find material on stuff and connect with other people is kind of the battle days. Morgan, so you had like a job, right? You finished undergrad, you were working at a nonprofit, right, when you decided to get into software development. What kind of led to that decision and helped you decide which way to go when you were figuring out how to learn?
I was too poor, primarily. I was kidding. I mean, obviously nonprofits and the tech industry do have a different salary differential. That did play a part of it. But I mean, I could have gone into a lot of other fields that paid well. And the main thing that attracted me to programming was the ability to be creative, to build products. If you have an idea, you can actually build it. You can't do that in finance or law or anything like that. And I've always been into entrepreneurship. I majored in entrepreneurship. That was my concentration in my undergrad business program. So I always knew I wanted to work for startups. And so I figured, programming was the best way to get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. So Sam, did you know graduating high school and going to undergrad that you were going to major in computer science, or did that take a little bit of thinking about how to go that direction? Or Rob, I keep calling you Sam. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I actually knew It very uncommonly that I knew that I was going to be a computer science major when I was applying and entering college. I was probably one of the few that knew that. Although, actually, I think that's reasonably common with computer science graduates because I've noticed that it's very uncommon to switch into computer science. It seems to be a very popular starting off field, but once people figure out that it's not all programming Halo, people leave and fewer come in. So, but I definitely went in with computer science.
Yeah, with that experience, if somebody is watching and they were 2 years into their undergrad experience and they were just realizing the software development was something they were interested in, like, could they switch into that? Is that something you think would be possible for them? And then upon graduation, start doing meaningful work?
I definitely think so. If they were 2 years in, you would need to at that point kind of rush your computer science courses and really stack them on. But for example, I graduated in actually 4.5 years. So it's not like there's a huge rigidity. You could easily transition and then just make sure that you were always on track every semester. And and you wouldn't be anywhere behind any other computer science major who went in their first semester with that in mind.
So William, how was your path from the dark side of PwC to the Flatiron School, and kind of what benefits have you really gained from having that hands-on bootcamp experience?
So I think that the main advantage is that if you do the bootcamp route, you can end up with a job just like if you did a regular formal degree, or if you taught yourself. And then the advantage over a regular, traditional university degree is that it's way faster and way cheaper. With the disadvantage being that some people will not take you seriously at first until you've had a job, on your resume. All you have is that boot camp. And then the advantage over the School of Hard Knocks is that it's all the knocks are very soft and gentle. There are no hard knocks. You don't have to sit there hammering away at the same problem for 4 hours making no progress, because you raise your hand and then someone comes over. In 5 minutes, you're back on track, and that's really nice. The disadvantage there, I think, is that, that's a really valuable experience, because there are going to be problems that you come across that no one knows the answer to, that you need to solve. And
yeah.
Did you ever walk in and get a little overwhelmed and have that jaw drop, what did I just get myself into moment? Or?
Yeah, well, the boot camps are very, it's the total immersion philosophy, right? So, I learned to speak Portuguese right before I joined the Flatiron School, and it was another total immersion situation where I was living in Brazil in a small town with not a lot of English speakers, and living with a family where most of the people didn't speak any English, and that is a stressful thing. At least with the boot camp, everybody spoke English too. It wasn't like you had to communicate in Ruby to find the bathroom. But there is some stress involved in being totally immersed in doing something very new all the time. But that's where you get all the gains. That's why you can get up to speed so quickly.
Yeah. So you mentioned the difficulty of convincing people to take you seriously. Now, Flatiron is a very well-known boot camp, in as much as any boot camp is well-known. And all of the people I've talked to out of the Flatiron have had very good experiences that I personally talked to. What was it like for people coming out that you may know either from your experience at Flatiron or folks that you may know elsewhere coming out of boot camps? Have they had as easy a time kind of finding work as you? Has it been a challenge for some of them?
I think that for me it was really very smooth, I would say. The path from Flatiron School to employment, because the Flatiron School is very established, and I think you're right, like, of the boot camps, that one's probably the easy. As established as a boot camp can be. But, of the boot camps, that one seems to have a lot of really good connections, and things things went really well. I was really happy with the job that I got and with the timeline for getting that job. But you know, it's a spectrum, right? Like, there were some people who got a job immediately, and it was amazing, and there were some people who, you know, it took a long time and was stressful. And there were some people who, you know, weren't super happy with the first opportunity that they got, and had to sort of adapt. But I don't know that it's that different from all of the other tracks, like whether you're self-taught or out of a university or out of anything else.
Yeah.
Well, let's find out. Morgan, do you have the same experience from the kind of mentorship angle and the School of Hard Knocks, as you said?
I'd say mine was actually pretty smooth as well. And I think it was, honestly, I got lucky. A lot of the inbound interest that I got when I was looking for a job had to do with my experience working with Angular at Thinkful, which happened to be a hot technology for, you know, the JavaScript world. You know, the part I left out was I was going to do a boot camp. I was 2 days into Full Stack Academy when I decided to leave and do the Thinkful Fellowship instead. I stayed in touch with a lot of people who, you know, were in my class, and the thing that I saw was that, you know, most of the boot camps teach Rails, right, Flatiron included, and you know, there is the technology you learn does make a difference, you know, separate from your skill and tenacity. You know, the people I know from my boot camp that got jobs, you know, some of the top students at the boot camp, they still are actually not using Rails. They're using a different technology. And there are transferable skills, but it was harder for them, you know, as a new bootcamp graduate without experience or formal training, looking for, you know, Rails jobs at small startups that generally like to hire more senior people. I found it easier coming from a JavaScript background and working with Angular, because it was a more widely used, obviously front-end JavaScript is a more widely used technology. And there were bigger companies that were hiring for that skill set, and so they were more willing to take on more junior developers. I don't know if this experience is shared with anyone else on the panel, but I'd be interested in hearing.
Yeah. Anybody is welcome, by the way, to kind of jump in.
I'm gonna put Andy on the spot here.
I kind of figured that was about to happen. I actually kind of fell into my job currently, and that happened because a prank I played on a friend where I wrote an application to automatically text them. And so he knew a guy who had a startup company. They're like, wait, if you can do that in, you know, 20 minutes, whatever it took me to do it, they were like, we're interested in you. So it just kind of happened to be that way. I would imagine that if I were to go hunting for a job, I would not have an easy time doing it because I don't have any formal training. I have one place where I've officially worked as a programmer and a handful of places where I've helped with that, but it hasn't been anything truly substantial.
So do you think that credibility issue that William was talking about might apply as well, being self-taught or learning on the job?
Yeah, it's just a credibility thing. I would have to prove it to them more than if I had a degree or even a what do you call those iron schools or whatever they were? Sorry, I forgot the name of them. Flatiron School or anything among those lines. I don't have anything like that saying, yes, someone taught this guy how to program. So I would imagine it'd be fairly difficult for me to find a new job easily.
Cool. So Matt, when you were looking for jobs, what was your situation? Did you find that it was pretty easy for you to convince people of your experience? Did you have credibility issues as you were looking around?
So interestingly enough, I didn't have to deal with the credibility issues because my first job was a part-time job in college, and the company was called CloudSpace, and they were advertising on campus looking for students. So I got hired doing web development for $7.25 an hour, which was a quarter more than minimum wage at the time. So I was practically making minimum wage doing web development. But I did that for 4 years, right? So I kind of endured the not making a lot of money doing what I loved for 4 years. And then after I graduated college, I found a full-time job. And I kind of, at that point, had the 4 years of experience that was necessary to kind of say, hey, I have some credibility.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that path kind of exists for people outside of the undergraduate setting?
So as far as I would interpret it, there are always people looking to underpay people for development. As long as you're willing to get underpaid, there's probably a job out there for you. But it's probably not the job you want. I think CloudSpace was an exception to that. Like, it was a great place to work. It was a great learning experience. But I'm going to say that's probably few and far between. It's going to be much harder to find a job without being able to prove that you have the skills that people are looking for. And that's basically what it's all about, marketing yourself correctly to find that job.
Yeah, yeah.
So Matt, how would you kind of, taking the track that you already had, how would you have improved that experience if you were to do it all over again?
I kind of pigeonholed myself in the technologies I was using for quite a while. I didn't learn a lot of the different technologies, and I felt like I should. There were a bunch of programming languages that were out there that I could have learned and could have played with, and part of it also was having that job in college. I stopped paying attention in college to the different things that they were talking about because I'm doing web development now, not computer science, and there's a huge disconnect between the two. Like, while they apply, they don't apply a lot. And so I kind of did okay in college, didn't really pay attention. And I think that was a mistake. There was lots of useful information that would help me nowadays if I had paid attention and had learned it then.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the major differences that I would have made, is become more of a generalist instead of a specialist.
Is there any way they could have made it more exciting so you could have gotten stoked about it the first time around?
You know, at that point, yeah, college, they could have. There are things that college students, people who particularly are programming, are interested in. Like when they were teaching me how to write an emulator for the MIPS system, so MIPS assembly. It's like, hey, we're going to make a computer, but I didn't understand the point of it. If they had rephrased it like, hey, we're going to write an emulator for a Game Boy, it's like, the Game Boy is something real to me. I would have been super stoked to do that. And I think it's just changing the way we're teaching to target what people are interested in, making it, you know, bringing it up to speed with the 21st century rather than, you know, the archaic pedagogy of, you know, what we have from the 1970s.
Yeah, the kind of contemporary technology issue is one that comes up a lot, I think, in informal like post-secondary education. Sam, when you were doing your undergraduate degree, and I guess even now in your master's, or Robert, I keep calling you Sam. I'm gonna keep myself here.
Yeah.
Like, did you find that the technologies you were learning in class were, I mean, aside from the computer science theory, did you find that the technologies you were using were relevant to any of the work that you've seen outside of school?
So even more so than the boot camps that are teaching Rails, the answer is definitely no.
Yeah.
If you're doing a computer science degree, if you're lucky, you're going to be doing a good portion of it in Java, and more likely you're going to be doing most of it in C and C++, which are good languages, but the chances of you landing a job in either, I mean, is not the highest. And so you definitely are learning concepts and not languages. And because of that, you really have to put a lot of time into learning things on your own on the side. And I would definitely say that the college degree prepares you to do that. When you understand the core concepts like object-oriented data structures and all that things, you are prepared to go out and learn something like Rails or JavaScript, but you're very unlikely to learn those things in school.
Yeah.
So how does it prepare you? Like, what just for people who are trying to figure out kind of where to start, what are the tangible benefits? And can you give us an example of that?
I would say the largest benefit would be a curriculum. So one of the major reasons that I wanted to get my undergraduate degree in computer science was the confidence that you get from saying, someone decided what a computer scientist is and then made me learn it, and now I know those things. Whereas if you're completely self-taught, you can get extremely proficient, but it probably takes a while for you to convince yourself that you know everything that you should. Especially in computer science job, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have that feeling that they're pretending. I don't remember what that's called, but
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, the imposter syndrome. There you go. I'm sure that's pretty common among developers that start to actually like get some responsibility. And it's nice to have something that says, no, no, you did a computer science degree. You've got that now.
So just to throw out that same concept out there, Morgan, do you have the same experience or thought process, considering that you had a curriculum and you kind of did it from a mentorship angle, having dropped out of the boot camp? Do you feel the imposter syndrome, or how do you?
I'd say I'm in the middle. I mean, I definitely agree with Robert that, you know, the curriculum is really valuable. So I had a curriculum, not a computer science curriculum. I had a front-end development curriculum. So, you know, when it came to those technologies, I felt pretty confident, you know, in my knowledge of them. I think that, you know, what I've learned is that no matter what your experience level as a programmer, you're always going to run the risk of feeling the imposter syndrome. There's always going to be a technology you don't know, you know, and you can always feel like you don't know anything about what you're learning. And then things that you do know are like in the back of your head and you're not even thinking about them consciously. So that's one of the things that I often tell people who are learning to code is that, you know, I met people with 10, 20 years of experience who are still struggling to learn new things, and that's just part of the job. And the exciting part, too, there's always something new to learn. And, you know, the kind of concept I've had in my head between like the self-taught versus the formal education path is that, you know, the formal education path is like, let's learn all the you know, the theory and the foundations and concepts that will help you no matter what specific industry you go into, whether it's web development or hardware development or whatever it is. The self-education path is much more like, okay, I'm going to go start working, and there's going to be things that I don't know, so let me go learn them. Yeah. And now I'm going to keep working, and oh, here's some more stuff I don't know, now let me go learn that. And it probably depends upon your personality as far as, you know, what path you prefer. Both are valid and have their pros and cons.
Yeah, absolutely. I should also say that we're going to get kicked out of this room in 3 minutes, so we'll start to wind things down. But I want to ask quickly, I suppose, Andy, if you were doing it all over again, starting today, would you have gotten into software development the same way that you did?
Actually, no. I think I would have gone the college route or something else along those lines, simply because it's good to put that on a resume. I mean, I'm confident in what I know now. I know several languages. I can function well as a programmer, but if I go looking for a job, it's hard for me to prove to them they should pay me what I should be making for my knowledge.
Yeah.
How did you go about crowdsourcing that curriculum and kind of bringing that discipline upon yourself?
Mostly interest, actually. After, you know, working at a few places, you say, oh, I want to do this. No, I need to learn how to do that. Whereas with college, I forget who was mentioning it, they'll say, hey, you should learn this to make an emulator for the MIPS system, not a Game Boy emulator. You don't want to make an emulator for the MIPS system. Game Boy emulator? Hells yeah. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. So Matthew, kind of given the state of education these days and your work with Metis and your own personal situation back in undergrad, would you have gone the undergrad route, or would you have tried to maybe short circuit that and get directly into the workforce more quickly?
I probably would have tried to get into the workforce a little bit more quickly. The job I took in college for minimum wage didn't require me to have a computer degree, obviously, since I was in college. And most of the jobs that I've taken afterwards haven't required me to have a computer degree. That's never been a thing that they've looked at. So for me, I felt that you can overcome the need for a computer degree for specific jobs if you can prove that you're worthwhile, if you can prove that you're worth the investment. And as it was already mentioned by Andy, that if you maybe have written an application and can show that, can show what you're capable of, like that gets rid of all those doubts out of the mind of the person who wants to hire you. So I would have tried to go directly in instead of going the college route. It was a long period of time in which I felt very broke for a very long time. It was a lot of suffering that probably wasn't necessary.
Yeah, yeah.
I would add to that, actually, that not only does it remove the doubt from the interviewer's mind, it removes the doubt from your mind. That's the cure to the imposter syndrome, or at least it was for me. When I was in the Flatiron School, before I had really built anything, you know, I was never going to call myself a web developer. That was a terrifying label to apply. Like, what do I know? I've been playing around doing like this curriculum. But then once I had web applications that I had built and that I was proud of, and other people thought were really cool, well then there was no cognitive dissonance in applying that term.
Yeah.
And that was what I think gave me the confidence to be able to go into the interview.
Yeah. Very cool. So, Morgan, would you have, if you could go back in time, would you have gone to full stack instead of continuing in kind of an internship role or like a fellowship role, learning on the job after your mentorship with Thankful?
I think no. Although, you know, for me, I would still love to do the right kind of boot camp or degree just because it's fun, you know, and like, I mean, I love what I'm doing at work. It's also fun. You know, I've thought about things like hacker school, where you just kind of explore stuff for 3 months with a lot of smart people around you. And, you know, I think the mentorship that you get is so powerful, and it really accelerates your learning progress. So, you know, any opportunity to get mentorship, whether it's from a boot camp or Thinkful or a university, you know, I think if you can swing it, then it's really worth your time.
Yeah. Well, Sam, would you go double CS if you were doing it again today? Or Robert?
Rob.
It's never going to stop that.
Yeah, I think so. I would definitely go the same route. It definitely has its downsides, but there are a lot of things I like about it. That's actually kind of shown by the fact that I'm getting my master's degree. If I had really thought my undergrad was a waste of time, I wouldn't have been going for a master's degree.
Awesome, guys. I think it's about that time. So thank you so much for joining us between the two firms that keep peeking out over the side and chatting about the best way to become an awesome badass dev. Anything else you want
Yeah, no, that's it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
This has been a blast, as always, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Have a good one.